BBC1, Omnibus goes to a millionaire's mansion near Guildford and looks at a frightening new work by comic strip illustrator Raymond Briggs.
Fungus the Bogeyman is the creation of Raymond Briggs, but now he's turned from entertaining children to the truly unthinkable nastiness of a nuclear holocaust. Later tonight, we follow the making of a radio play from Briggs's shocking strip cartoon. Accomplished and successful illustrator for many years, his first go-it-alone effort was Father Christmas. This showed us the real Santa, a character all the more lovable for his faults. And then Briggs gave us Fungus the Bogeyman. He was disgusting and awful in every possible way, and children loved him. And after the extraordinarily repulsive, the very ordinary. Gentleman Jim, a public loo attendant who dreams of doing something more glamorous. Jim and his wife Hilda are once again the main characters, indeed the only characters, in this book, When the Wind Blows. The format is still comic strip, but the message is desperate. What it's like to live and die in the English countryside when the bomb goes off. The book was published last year with no intention at the time, so the author says, of it being a political tract, although that's the way it's been seen by some people. Now Briggs has made his comic strip into a stage play to be seen at the Bristol Little Theatre. And we've been seeing how When the Wind Blows has been translated into radio terms. It goes out as the Monday play on Radio 4 tomorrow evening. The story is unmistakably set in Raymond Briggs's own home surroundings on the edge of the Sussex Downs, and begins with Jim returning home in a rather dejected state from a visit to the nearby town.
And Q. Bryan.
Last year, Raymond Briggs produced a cartoon book called When the Wind Blows, about a simple, innocent, elderly couple facing up to the horrors of the nuclear holocaust and trying to follow the instructions they'd been given. The book rapidly became a bestseller. When the Wind Blows, with Brenda Bruce as Hilda and Peter Sallis as Jim.
Hello, dear.
Hello, love. Did you have a nice morning, dear?
Oh, all right, thanks. Rather uneventful. My life isn't very fast-moving or dynamic.
Well, you are retired, James. You do look a bit down, dear.
Yes, well, been reading the papers in the public library all the morning.
Oh, those things, full of rubbish. I never look at them, except the stars.
We must keep abreast of the international situation, Ducks. The decisions made by the powers that be will get to us in the end.
Politics and sport, that's all they're full of.
It could affect us all. The ultimate deterrent and all that. They say there may be a preemptive strike, dear. Yes, they say it may break out at any time now.
Well, at least you won't be called up this time, James. You're far too old.
Oh, thank you, my beloved. I'm still 2 years younger than you.
Well, if the worst comes to the worst, we'll just have to roll up our sleeves, tighten our belts and put on our tin hats till it's VE day again.
It won't be like that this time, love.
Did it start as a protest book? Is that how it was conceived?
No, it was. I just thought it was a very nice human story to do. I didn't think of it as a piece of CND propaganda, which is what lots of people said it was, or communist propaganda, which other people said it was. It was just done as from the human point of view, and I wasn't even a member of CND at the time.
And the two characters, Jim and Hilda, are they based on people known to you?
Well, they're somewhat like my parents, though I like to think my parents weren't quite as dim as they are, but they have to be dim to follow, protect and survive, you see. So I couldn't make them of normal intelligence.
In order to do the book, you went and collected all the relevant leaflets, didn't you, which are issued to the civilian population
Yes.
with regard to an explosion of this kind.
Yeah. Oh, well, I thought they were quite funny. I thought Protect and Survive was quite good, and there's a local one in West Sussex called the Householder's Survival Guide, and they contradict one another on some fundamental points, which was quite interesting. Protect and Survive says remove thin materials from windows, and the West Sussex one says hang white sheets in the windows. So that was really rather good. I had to put that bit in.
Massive Russian troop movements continue along the East German border.
Crumbs!
What's the matter, dear?
This is it, Dux. This is really it. It's lucky I got more leaflets from the public library only this morning. I gave the first lot to our Ron. Here we are, see? Protect and Survive and the Householder's Survival Guide. Now, this one should be really authoritative. It's printed by the County Council. We'd better commence the construction of the inner core or refuge immediately, dear. We must do the correct thing.
There's treacle tart and custard or cold bread and butter pudding.
Treacle tart.
Do you think it had any effect? Has it had any effect on people's thinking? Or on the government's thinking?
Oh, no, it wouldn't affect the government's thinking. I don't think they think about it, really. Or at least they don't imagine about it. It's affected, various people who've written to me, particularly a little girl in Australia, said that she'd never thought about it before, and she's now working as best she can for the peace movement and has written to Mr. Fraser and sent him a copy of the book. And another lady in Arizona, I think it was, in America, has done something similar. She said she read it on the bus on the way home, cried all the way home, and she's now become a really dedicated worker for peace and so on. So I suppose it must have affected some people.
Just you be careful. Mind that paint. Be careful of that stair carpet. Mind the wallpaper.
It's all right.
Raymond Briggs's first radio script starts to take shape in Studio B10.
I hope you know what you're doing.
It's a production by the assistant head of radio drama, John Tiedemann.
Bag.
Brenda Bruce and Peter Sallis have the tough job of making us believe in the almost incredibly naive Jim and Hilda. John, did you know the work of Raymond Briggs before this script came to you?
Yes, I had it for my birthday, and I'd read it and been very, very moved by it. So therefore, I was quite surprised when the script came in.
What form did
delighted.
it come in? Did Raymond just send it to you?
Well, yeah. Two people, in fact, had actually suggested doing an adaptation of it, and we thought, well, it's impossible, you know, it's a cartoon book. And then suddenly, out of the blue, Raymond sent in the script, and he showed that it was absolutely possible. He'd done it.
One might have supposed that a strip cartoon would transfer more easily into television than radio.
Well, only as a strip cartoon, I think, because I can remember seeing over Christmas a television cartoon version of Raymond's Snowman, which I thought was marvellous. I think you could only do this on television as a cartoon, because in television I think that you expect a reality, you expect an actuality. I don't think television is very successful at stylization. The theatre can do it, but I don't think television can. Radio can, because you can, each listener will imagine the full horror. They will each have their own picture of it.
Well, the inner core or refuge looks quite cosy, doesn't it, dear?
I hope those doors aren't marking the wallpaper, James.
Well, come in and dry it out, please, dear.
Bunch up. Can't you, James?
Careful, you'll have it over.
Couldn't you have made it a bit wider?
It's constructed in compliance with governmental specifications, dear.
Well, they might have made it wide enough for two people. Suppose you were married.
We are married, dear.
Yes, well, there you are then. What about if you had children? Where would they go?
Oh, you just hold them in your arms. They'd soon fall asleep.
You get used to seeing it on paper and you might think it's all right, but then when you hear it done by really good actors, it It's really amazing. It was very actually upsetting at the read-through, because when you're writing, it takes several weeks to write, and then another 18 months or so to illustrate it, and I got completely detached from it in all that time, I think. And having the whole lot thrown at you in the space of an hour, it was much more moving than I thought it was. I thought it was quite funny, the book, actually. But it was quite upsetting.
Do you think they'll invade?
Oh, no, won't need to. It'll all be done by missiles, long range. Then they'll instill commuters to take charge of us.
It's funny to think there's no shelters this time. We had an old Anderson in the garden. I can see it now. We had nasturtiums growing all over it, and we painted the front green. It looked quite pretty. Next door grew cabbages on theirs.
Yes. We had a Morrison. I used to sleep in it. I stuck pin-up girls all over the inside. Betty Grable, Anne Shelton, Patricia Rott, yeah? The roof got all smoky because I used to read in bed with a candle.
Yes, it was nice in the war, really. The shelters, the blackout.
The all clear, cups of tea, the ARP.
Evacuees. London kids seeing cows for the first time.
Old Churchill on the wireless. The 9 o'clock news.
Workers' playtime, Itmar.
There were Spitfires and Hurricanes up in the blue sky, vapour trails.
Old Jerry used to come over every night.
Those were the
There were days.
Vera Lynn singing away. There'll be bluebirds over
the white cliffs of Dover. Tomorrow, just you wait and see.
So I'm a bit fed up with illustrating. I've been doing it for every day of my life for 20-odd years, and it's very laborious and very repetitive, and I much more enjoy the writing, really, because it's relatively simpler and quicker. I mean, with this book, When the Wind Blows, you write it in about 4 or 5 weeks and spend the next 18 months illustrating it, doing 650 pictures of the same person. If you do a radio play, you just write it, and when you've written it, it's finished. At least my part in it is finished. And you haven't got to sit down and draw a head every time it speaks, you know.
Are you going to have to issue any kind of warning? Because there is an announcement, isn't there, of impending disaster, as it were, delivered in World of One tones.
Yes.
How are you going to avoid people mistaking that for the real thing?
Well, of course, that is a worry. I mean, say someone were to put on the radio just at that moment when they hear the 3-minute warning, we're aware that someone could think, my God, this is the real thing. I mean, this is part of the terror of the whole thing, that should actually be possible, you know, that we could think, God, that really is. It's a 3-minute warning and not a 4-minute warning that we have in this. So we're aware of that problem, so we had to write it in such a way that it is going to be quite clear to the listener that this is something that is coming out of a radio set and not actually happening in the here and now of the world at one.
You can wear your old clothes for the bomb and save your best for afterwards.
All right, dear. But is there an old white one without stripes? I don't want stripes all over me.
There's an old one in the air in the kitchen, but it won't be ironed.
That's all right, dear.
I'm forever
We are interrupting this
blowing
programme
bubbles,
for an official
pretty
government announcement.
bubbles in the air.
An enemy missile attack
Shut up!
launched against this country.
For God's sake, shut up!
You and your
Will arrive
blessed
in
news.
approximately
3 minutes. 3 minutes.
God almighty, Dux, there's only 3 minutes to go.
Oh,
Stay indoors.
oh dear.
Take cover.
I'll just get the washing in.
Lie
Come
down.
back, you stupid
Keep away
bitch.
from
Get
windows.
inside.
How dare
Cover
you
your
talk
head.
to me like
Shut up and get in the shelter.
There's no need to forget our manners just
Get in.
because there's a war.
Get in, get
I've never
in.
heard such language in my
For
life.
God's sake, get in.
Do not leave your home.
Oh dear, I've left the oven on.
This as an
The
official
cake will
government
be
announcement.
burned.
Well done, yeah, fine. Look, go buy that one.
Since finishing the book, I've read stacks and stacks of books and leaflets and things about it, and I hadn't realised before how terrible the whole thing is. I think it was Dimbleby himself said that it's not apathy that stops people protesting more, it's ignorance.
There's nothing like a cup of tea. Crumbs! I must be dreaming. The news. No, there's nothing. There's nothing, it's all dead.
What about the telly?
Yes, of course. They may have filmed it all. We may see our bomb on the news. No, it's all dead.
No picture?
No.
Not even just the voices?
No. Nothing. All dead.
All dead.
Put the kettle on, will you, ducks?
There's no water, dear.
Oh, no, of course. Oh, we'll just have to have milk then.
That pint has gone bad, dear. The fridge has been off.
Oh, heck. Well, black coffee then.
There's still no water, dear.
Well, what are we going to drink? Eh? I ask you. What are we going to drink, for God's sake?
Don't shout, dearest.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just terribly...
Oh, how about a nice sweet, dear? There's only one left. It's a black currant throat pastille.
You have it.
No, you have it.
Oh, we'll cut it in half, that's fair.
Do you think that it's going to actually affect people's attitude towards the bomb to make them want to go out and march for CND or do something about it? What do you think is going to happen there?
I don't think that is the intention, but I hope that people will be made more aware of the horror that could occur when, or if, when, how awful to say when, if the bomb were in fact to go off. I think it, yes, I think it will colour people. I hope it does. I mean, one's not talking about multilateral or unilateral disarmament. One is talking about there being no armament at all.
Oh, look. There's funny blue spots on my legs.
Various veins. That's what it is.
Oh.
It's a common complaint amongst the middle-aged segment of the populace. It's nothing to worry about.
It don't look like veins to me. I don't like the look of it.
Oh, you are a baby. You're a born warrior, you are. Now, try and look on the bright side, hey, Duck? Look, look. Even I've got funny blotches on my skin. I'm a man. Too much tin food, that's all it is.
Bill, you just never disagree with me.
We have a sing-song, dear. Take your mind off it. What's the use of worrying? It never was worthwhile. So, back up your troubles in your own.
No prizes for guessing how that story ends. When the Wind Blows can be heard on Radio 4 tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, and it's repeated next Sunday afternoon. If Bristol's Little Theatre Company bring their production of When the Wind Blows to London, as they hope, They'll add to a growing volume of anti-bomb protest on platform and stage. The first performance of the Ian McEwan Michael Barclay oratorio, Or Shall We Die, was given at the Festival Hall tonight. There's Any Minute Now at the Theatre Royal Stratford East, and there's what's described as a peace cabaret, the GLC Nuclear Bunker Party, which opens in the East End this weekend and will then tour around. It's actually been put together and paid for by the Arts and Recreation Committee of the GLC, whose chairman is Tony Banks. Mr. Banks, Teddy Taylor, the Tory MP, has objected, as he's done before, to the use of Arts Council money to back the show that's on at Stratford East any minute now. And here are you using ratepayers' money to put on the GLC Bunker Party, and your opponents, no doubt, in the council would say this was an improper use of ratepayers' money.
Yes, I'm sure they would, and no doubt will. I'd just like to say that the GLC is also backing Any Minute Now with ratepayers' money because, of course, we fund the theatre at Stratford. But I believe that, that what we're trying to do is to use the arts to convey the message of peace and the desperate urgency of the situation that I think we're in this country at the moment. It seems a proper use of ratepayers' money.
Well, you say the message of peace, but there are those who would argue, and certainly the government's among them, that the best way of preserving peace is to be strong.
Again, I think you're confusing the issue here, because what politically, what the Labour Party is saying, that nuclear weapons, in fact, don't guarantee peace, but they actually increase the chances of war. We seem just to be moving towards it because generals, when they've got weapons, want to use them. And we're even talking about strategy where we can talk in terms of fighting a nuclear war and talking about surviving. And I think that Raymond Briggs cartoon and the story is so enormously powerful and terribly chilling. There is no second chance here. And frankly, if we can do anything to bring that home through arts and through using the rates, then I don't make any apologies for it at all.
Yes, but there are others. I agree with you. The story is incredibly moving. It's absolutely terrifying, and I'm just as terrified as anybody else. But there is another view. People do hold other views. Would you, in your theatres, or the theatres that you have influence over, would you allow the other view to be stated?
Well, it isn't a question of that. The other view is being stated all the time by the government. You've only got to look, for example, at the fact that next year we're going to be spending £15,000 million on arms, which is £250 for every man, woman and child in this country. We spend £3 per head on the arts in this country. It's crazy. Our values are all upside down in this country. It isn't as though we've got to look for a balance in that sense, because there is already a hideous imbalance in this society. The newspapers, the government are always telling us that we've got to have nuclear weapons. We need to preserve them because it's necessary for our security. I don't believe it. I think that what we're doing in a minute way is trying to redress the imbalance that's quite hideous.
So if the Little Theatre Bristol asks you for accommodation or help in putting this show on in London, you won't hesitate to give it?
I've already told them that they've got it.
What's the situation with the theatres, the other theatres in London, where you hold the freehold, or you might hope to hold the freehold as time goes on? This has been one of your announced intentions, hasn't it, that you'd like to take possession of more theatres in London?
Well, no, not really. The GLC already owns 6 theatres in London, the freeholds. We took them over for various things like road widening projects that didn't come about. I like the idea of us being able to preserve live theatre in London. I think the best way of doing it is to set up a sort of a London equivalent of the National Theatre Trust, which can be endowed with sufficient money in order to keep the theatres live, because it's a vital part of the art scene in London.
Would you want to have some influence on what was put on in those theatres?
No, none at all. It's one of those caricatures, the GLC's arts policy, that somehow we only want to put on left-wing theatre or left-wing art. That is, we haven't interfered in any way whatsoever in any of the theatres that we invest in.
It could be said that you slightly interfered with the National Theatre with the grant there because you disapproved of the fact that they were thinking of going outside for their cleaning.
Yes, well, we disapproved...
For outside contractors.
Yes, indeed. We disapproved of their industrial relations. We didn't disapprove of the productions that they mounted. We didn't do, for example, what the Tories did at County Hall when they were last in control, which was to object to Howard Brenton's play The Romans and therefore chop the National Theatre grant. We've never done anything like that, never would.
It's been said of you that if anything's done in the open air, that's all right with you. In other words, you've got this tremendous preference for community arts. Arts in the street, you might say.
Yes, I believe that we need to have greater access for the arts, and I don't accept the statement that you made at the beginning. We have put on a lot of productions in the open air, as a matter of fact, and inside shopping centres and factories, and very popular they've proved, because quite frankly, if you want to make the arts more accessible, I think you've actually got to take the arts to the people, rather than expecting them, for example, to come to Sutton Place. I mean, I know that was a fine evening to spend, and you no doubt thoroughly enjoyed yourself, but 25 quid a head, I mean, it's not going to be a mass draw. And I can't see the unemployed being able to afford £25 to go there, so it's very restrictive.
Well,
it's
you
very
wouldn't have
elitist.
much change out of that if you went out to a comparable evening in London. You went out to
Well,
dinner,
if you're
so
unemployed,
it's
I
not
mean,
that
you wouldn't have that amount of money in London either, and I'm thinking about arts for the 4 million people or more in this country who are enduring the enforced leisure that unemployment brings, and that's why I want to see our arts policy taking account of these social conditions
You're
in our
spending a
society.
good deal more on the arts than was the case before you came into power. Where's it coming from, that money?
Well, it's coming from the rates, of course. It's coming from the people who are paying through their local taxes. That's where it's coming from. It's not coming from any other programme areas. I believe, again, it's a perfectly justifiable use of ratepayers' money. Just as I'd like to see more of our taxes spent on the arts rather than on arms.
But not all your ratepayers would agree with your political views, would they? I mean, do you have the right to, as it were, impose your political views on what's done in the theatres?
Well, we have a manifesto, and we were elected freely on a manifesto. And under those circumstances, we're not actually imposing. We're putting forward various activities and various options. I don't believe that there is as much objection to what we're doing as you suggest.
But is the theatre the place for propaganda?
The theatre is a place for all things. It's also mainly, I think, a place for art that has a message. I mean, art that has no message, arts activities that has no message, that are totally safe, really, I think, mean nothing and quickly pass away. Yes, I think the arts should be used. We are using them, and I'm being honest enough to say so. We are using the arts as a way of getting over very, very important, very powerful social messages, and that is how the arts traditionally have always been used.
Mr. Banks, thank you very much. That's all for tonight. Next week we'll be re-examining the question of the Elgin marbles with Melina McCurry and Enoch Powell, among others, and we escape into the future with science fiction fantasy. Good night.
Thank you.